Well, hello, and welcome to the Horror Screams Video Vault podcast, episode 19. Unbelievable. We're part of the Horror Screams Video Vault network, and welcome to a new episode. And it's a big hello to Sarah on the other side.
Hello there.
How's it going, Sarah?
It's all very good. Staying safe.
Yes, staying safe. Yeah, here in merry old England, where it's raining like all the time, as the cliche goes. Yeah, we're kind of reopened. Things are sort of in some part of normality. Not sure how it is in the rest of the world. I suppose different stages, but things are open. You can go to the shop and almost hug a stranger. We're almost at that point, so that's cool. Yeah, episode 19. We've got a lot going on. Matt, our lovely colleague and friend Matt Blissett was due to join us this time, but unfortunately, scheduling conflicts and all that, he's had to bow out. So he will join us for the next episode, which we'll talk about later. But if you're wondering where Matt is, he's not here. So there we go. Today we've got a big show ready for you. It's Television Terror. So we'll be talking about individually our favorite TV horror show of all time, and then we'll also be touching in on some of the other kind of also rans, the shows that have stood out for us that have a kind of horrific bent. So I think it's going to be kind of cool. We've both got our personal favorites, so we're going to be yammering on about those, but we'll be sort of touching on others as well. And before that, of course, it's the usual business of recently seen, recently done, recently listened, recently whatnot, and all that. So let's get to it, and hope you're all well, of course. So recently seen, well, we have both been indulging in a couple of TV shows on the old streaming networks, and one of them we spoke about previously, which was Them. Since the last podcast, we've both finished Them, the Amazon Prime show set in the 50s racially divided America, and it's all wrapped up and done. So Sarah, I mean, what were your thoughts on how Them transpired in the end and how it wrapped up?
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, because you just had one episode left to go, didn't you?
Actually, yes, that's true.
I was going to pick your brain on your thoughts on the final episode.
Yep, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, now I remember, because you're done and dusted, right?
Pretty much, yep, all done.
Crumbs always behind me. Yeah. So, hey, you know what? Them, yeah. So I was kind of disappointed. So I thought Them was really good. I mean, all round, you're looking at it as a whole, was it 10 episodes, I think?
Yeah.
It's clearly a really well-made show. It's well acted. It's about an important thing. It's also a horror show that works hard to be horrific, which at times it was really horrific and disturbing. I was disappointed by the end. I thought the end seemed a bit of a rush to wrap everything up, and it seemed a bit kind of like ticking the boxes. I didn't think it was awful, but I thought, oh, that's a shame. We're not going to give it away, but I thought the very kind of the last shot or the last sequence was a bit disappointing. I was thinking, yeah, and with that noise, and I thought it built up an interesting story with one of the key white characters that was then thrown away with a joke at the start. I can't get it, but it was thrown away as a joke at the start of episode 10, almost as if to say, well, you know, there we go, and let's move on and wrap up the rest because we've got to get through a lot of stuff. So I was disappointed. I don't quite know how I would have wanted it to end, but I did feel they aired a bit towards more conventional kind of mainstream horror stuff by the end. Having said that, there was so much good stuff in Them, and I think that, I mean, out of 10, at least 8 episodes were really strong, especially a couple around the middle there.
Yeah.
I guess it's that classic thing. I thought the build-up was stronger than the payoff. So I thought the absolute dread and horror of maybe the first 5, 6, maybe even 7 episodes with the stuff in the school, the horrifying backstory of the baby. I thought that stuff was so great. I can't really see how they could have followed through because it was so strong. But what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of feel like the last episode kind of went very psychological, didn't it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Kind of playing on the individual fears and concentrating more on the father character being haunted by his black-faced friend without the fingers.
Yeah.
Kind of sending him crazy. I guess it possibly went a little bit disjointed because of episode 9, I reckon, which was the kind of more black and white
Oh
backstory
yes.
of the priest type. Was he a priest or Mormon type character
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
who becomes a ghost? You know, in the present day of that situation, they kind of they could possibly have slotted that in a bit earlier on, because I
Hmm.
think I feel like it broke it up a little bit too much for you to then go, oh, and there's one episode left, how's this going to go? And then they're just like, cram it all together.
Yeah, I agree actually. Yeah,
Yeah,
that episode. I see. I really liked the black and white episode, which was
it
to
was
me,
really good. It
it
was
was
good
really
backstory.
atmospheric. Yeah,
Yeah, had a lot of meaning. You kind of went, oh, I get it now. You
yeah,
know, with
and
that
maybe that
whole
was a
stuff.
strange place to put it.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think that the thing with Betty was pure genius in my eyes. Pure genius, because they built her up over the episodes, and you're thinking she's some kind of terrifying, horrible character, and something horrible's going to happen. And yeah, they just go, yeah, and now she's gone.
yeah, I kind of get
Which,
that actually. Yeah.
yeah, I thought that was clever, and I enjoyed that bit. But yeah, on the whole, it was a good season. But yes, a little bit rushed at the end, and interesting to see what they're going to do with the next one.
For sure, yeah, I'm really interested. I mean, there's mad talent there, isn't there? The
Mm.
actors, the creator is Little Marvin, right? That's his name.
Yeah, that's his
Um,
name. I really
so that's
liked
cool.
the character of Ruby, the older daughter.
Yes, superb. Yeah,
She was
absolutely. Some of the best
fantastic.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you felt so much for her as well.
Oh, and that's what I mean. Yeah, I think that's maybe my problem. And it's the show's very good, whichever way you slice it. But I think that early stuff, especially with her, and she's such a key part of the show, was so strong, and you were so involved in that. Yeah, that's pretty great. And the
Yeah.
black and white episode was really good. I liken it a lot to the black and white episode of the second season of The Haunting of Bly Manor, or follow up to Hill House, which also did a black and white backstory episode right before the finale. And in the case of Bly Manor, which I think we both agreed has its problems, perfectly splendid.
Oh
Um,
no, no,
for
don't bring that
example,
back. Yeah.
Christ, is wrong. Somebody just shut her up. The little girl from Bly Manor, God rest her soul. And she was awful. But yeah, but apart from
Terrible.
her, but the black and white episode with the what's her, is it the pale faced lady or the I think that it was the backstory of one of the key ghosts anyway,
Uh-huh.
and I thought that was outstanding. And probably better than the rest. And I thought the black and white episode of them was great, but like you said, I think maybe that's part of the problem that I had is it maybe was misplaced and should have been part of the early going.
Yeah.
Um, but cool. In any case, I think I would say a hearty recommend to them. It's
Sure.
something special. It's not perfect, but it's not far from it, probably. Um, cool. Another show that we both finished in between podcasts was Creepshow, the second season of the Shudder revival of the fantastic George Romero film from the 80s. And this was pretty much joy, right?
Oh, it was fabulous, wasn't it? Season two, it was like on top form. I really
It was.
enjoyed. I really enjoyed season one. This might come up later on in the podcast as well, but yeah, some absolute corkers in season two. Absolutely brilliant. What did you think of the final one, episode 5, Night of the Living Late Show?
I'd forgotten the name, but yes, that's the one. Yeah, I really liked that. That was fantastic. I think that was something special. I've always been a fan of Horror Express,
Yes.
being a chap that grew up on kind of older horror movies showing on TV in the 80s, which Horror Express was often on TV. I rather like Justin Long, who was the star of this, and I thought the efforts they made to kind of integrate obviously real footage of Horror Express with Justin Long interacting with it and the story built around it was really clever, and affectionate for the film as well. So yeah, that was a fine finish. And a nice idea as well to have a whole episode where it was just the one story, in this case a
Yeah.
story that kind of warranted a longer format. Nice end, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of felt a little bit deflated after. I was kind of hoping for 2, but yeah, it did good. It
Yeah,
didn't go on too long. And yeah, it incorporated some great movies. Not only, what was it?
Horror Express.
Horror Express, sorry. Yes, Horror Express, but then they also had like little bits of Night of the Living Dead put in there as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which was cool. And I kind of get it. They're both public domain, so they could kind of do whatever they like with that footage and it wouldn't cost them. But it was a nice way of using that stuff, I think.
It was
And
a great concept as well. Everyone would love to do that, wouldn't they? If you could, what movie
yeah,
would you go into?
yeah, it was basically a kind of tanning bed, but where you could have
Yeah,
a VR movie experience, wasn't it? I'd want
yeah.
something weird. Oh, geez, I'd like to think I wouldn't be so cheap that I'd end up in some 80s Richard Gere film, but that probably is what I do. Um, but that's a personal thing. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, geez, I haven't thought about it. I'm panicking slightly. What movie would you choose?
Oh,
Wait a
okay.
minute, it's a zombie film, isn't
Yeah, definitely. Any kind of zombie film. I'd love to go. I'd love to go into one of the Romero ones, but then I'd also like to go into one like World War Z or something like that, and just feel the panic of the fast-running zombies and stuff. See how that would
Oh,
be in like
I'd be too
virtual reality.
traumatized.
It would be amazing.
And actually, I mean, I guess we're probably not too far. We are already at the virtual reality stage, but we're probably not too far from something similar that Justin Long climbs into and has this truly immersive experience.
Yeah, it's kind
Um,
of kind of Black Mirror-esque.
yeah, Black Mirror, yeah, which is actually a show I'd forgotten about, but Black Mirror is very much the kind of show that we should be talking about on here. Yeah, I thought it was great. The rest of the season was really good too. We talked, I
Yeah.
think, about the Evil Dead revival with
Oh,
Ted Raimi, which started it off.
could talk about that
Um,
all the time. I could watch that every day.
some crossover with them because Ryan Quanten was in one. It was great to see. I know we slightly disagreed, but I know I really enjoyed the episode with Molly Ringwald, who I like from the 80s John Hughes High School stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
that was an interesting story. It was a funny
yeah,
story.
it's by Rusty Cundiff, who's a really cool director who I always really liked. He did things like Fear of a Black Hat, tends to do, and did Tales from the Hood, which is a really good anthology, who tends to do kind of satirical stuff. Um, but yeah, it was full of Barbara Crampton was in a good episode, wasn't she,
Yeah,
as
Josh
the
McDermott.
horrible landlady? Yes.
He was fabulous in
Yeah.
Pesticide as a kind of lazy insect killer.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And nice to see people like Joe Lynch directed one and Axel Carolyn did one. It was a nice mixture. Obviously, Greg Nicotero somehow finds time to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Creepshow is really good. It's obviously been a hit. I'm assuming that season 3 will be along next year. The only
Hope.
strange thing, I suppose, is it's a bit of a shame that this hasn't happened sooner because I suppose
Mm,
it took something like Shudder to come along to make something like this. Um, but yeah, the concept could go on forever, couldn't it?
yeah. Hopefully they'll do their little holiday specials as well for Halloween and Christmas.
Yes,
That needs to become like annual occurrence.
I assume it will be because annoyingly, I haven't seen the Halloween one yet, but the Christmas one was great, and the Halloween one you said is also really good. So
It's
yeah,
brilliant. You need to see it.
looking forward to it. I'll quickly run through some other recently seen. So yeah, recommends for them and Creepshow. If you've got the appropriate streaming services, go watch them. I've seen a few good movies. I watched a film called Becky, um, which I don't know how well known it is. It stars Kevin James, who is
Right.
better known as a funny guy in kind of Hollywood comedies. And here he's playing a Nazi, total bastard. The concept of this is really good. It's been done before, but it's basically Home Alone, sort of reinvented as a horror home invasion movie. And it's got a teenage girl who goes to stay with her dad. Her mum's died of cancer, and she goes to stay with her dad at a lake house. Just at the point where Kevin James and his band of escaped convicts turn up at the house looking for, although it's never really explained, it's some kind of very, very important Nazi piece of memorabilia that's in the attic or something. But the teenage girl has it. And the whole movie, without giving much away, the whole movie is about how this 13-year-old girl basically Macaulay Culkin style, but with extreme violence, um, fights back and tries to best this kind of burly brick shithouse style bunch of convicts that have taken over her house. And it's fantastic. It really is good. It keeps going and going. It's an hour and a half. It's a very quick hour and a half. And it has a couple of moments of gore that make you go, oh, wow, you're okay, this is that kind of film. But she's great. She's really good. You totally root for her. And I'd absolutely recommend it. It's called Becky. It's in England, it's on Sky. It's probably on other services too, but it's really good. It's really surprising. It's extremely well made. And like I said, the thing it will most remind you of is a kind of ultra nasty Home Alone with a older person in charge, marginally
That's
older,
cool.
13. Really good. Go.
They always seem to work out quite well whenever they try and do ones like
Yeah,
that.
they've
And
done it a few times, haven't they? Better
yeah,
Watch Out and
yes.
Aggression Scale is another one that comes to mind. But yeah, it's a great premise. Home Alone is maybe only three rewrites away from being a pure horror movie anyway.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's
if they
not
just
far off.
added a bit more gore,
Yeah,
be
this,
actual
yeah,
kills. I'm looking
this
at
is
some
brilliant.
pictures. I'm looking at some pictures
Ah,
of it now, and Kevin James looks like a pirate.
yeah. I mean, as far as I remember, he's usually in cuddly comedies like I think
Yeah, yeah.
Zookeeper or something, or is it Paul Mal? What's that guy? Malcop? Paul? Oh, you see, I don't know. I don't watch many comedies, but I have seen one of them. Um, yeah, he's great. He's soft spoken, and he could go either way in this. At first, he's quite cuddly because he's got that kind of physique, and he's soft spoken. But then you realise, oh shit. So yeah, check out Becky. I think anyone listening will love it.
Cool.
Um, also watch the latest Wrong Turn. So this is on I think it's on Prime, but it's out there and it came out straight to streaming I think this year. So the Wrong Turn franchise has been around for a while, 20 years ish, I
Good
think, just
God.
under. Exactly. I feel
Crikey.
very old. And this is really effectively the seventh film, although it's doing that thing where it's just called Wrong Turn. So it's not really a remake, but it is a kind of different slant on things. It's not quite the inbred hillbilly hills have eyes style thing that the other films are, and I won't spoil it as explaining why, but it is quite different even though you think it's heading in that direction. And I quite like this. I mean, it's the Wrong Turn sequels got very silly. Like the first one's serious, and then the second one's great, but the second one's pretty jokey. And then by the time of Wrong Turn 5, you know, you've got kind of fairly silly gore scenes and everything.
Mm.
But this turns it much more serious. It's got Matthew Modine, um, and it's framed with his scenes. It's nice to see him actually in a film. I haven't seen him in a film for ages, but it's framed with scenes of him basically looking for his missing daughter, who's gone up into the usual setting for these films, the Appalachian Mountains, I think it is. And then you find out in flashback-ish what happened to those young people out there. And what I liked about this, I mean, it's fairly tense. It's gone back to basics, so it's not kind of larking around. The violence is pretty short but very brutal, so it's quite shocking at times. I just thought it was really well done. It was a nice attempt to kind of recover the series from becoming this spoofy-ish thing that it did become, and making it a bit more serious like the original. So yeah, quite like Wrong Turn. It's out there. Check it out,
Nice.
even though it is the seventh one and it's got the same name as the original, like Halloween and all those other ones. It's not really a remake, it's just we're starting again kind of thing. Elsewhere, I've seen Saint Maud, which was a British film that I've been wanting to see for a while. It got loads of great reviews last year, and in fact, I think it was one of those few films that did really well at the cinema last year in between lockdowns. Um, Horror films always do well, and I think this one did really well around Halloween last year, when at least in England things were sort of unlocked for a while.
Mm.
Um, Saint Maud is quite nicely described. I think it's by the director's Rose Glass, one of a number of really talented female directors that have been making horror films in the last couple of years or so, and she describes it as something like Taxi Driver, but instead of what he is in Taxi Driver, Travis Bickle is now a young Catholic girl in miserable Scarborough, you know, and it is set there, and it is in this kind of downbeat British seaside town. And the premise of it is better than it sounds when I describe it. But the premise is that the character of Maud is looking after a cancer patient, and she's hearing the voice of God, and she thinks that the voice of God is compelling her to do this and that. And again, not spoiling anything, but it goes to a very dark place. It's one of those. I suppose you'd consider it a slow burn horror film. There's no jump scares or anything like that, but it gets darker and darker as it goes. And like Relic, which we talked about, I think in a recent podcast, it's
Hmm.
obviously got a very serious theme. In this case, terminal illness again. but it's really well done. And it's got such a shocking moment at the very, very end, like the last few seconds are really kind of, oh, okay. So yeah, Saint Maud I thought was fantastic.
I
And
think I
yeah,
heard a lot of people on various groups and stuff saying similar things about it.
yeah,
There
if
are
you
some
go with
actual
it,
like proper. Did you find it scary? I think from what I've heard from people saying, is that they were like actually scared by it.
it's very disturbing. Yeah, I don't know, scary. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it depends what you respond to, I suppose,
Yeah.
with a horror movie, but as does everything, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely disturbing, and it's got a very you get very involved in her character. You really root for her, but she's clearly disturbed, and I suppose, the whole thing is that she thinks she's hearing the voice of God, but what you're really watching is one young woman's total mental breakdown um, while she's dealing with this person that's so very seriously ill. But again, you hope things will be okay for her, and it becomes pretty shocking in terms of so yeah, I'd recommend Saint Maud really strongly. Well, it is upsetting. But on a lighter note, also on Shudder, which obviously is cranking them out, you know, 10 to the dozen, is Psycho Gorman, which which was just added yesterday, and I fancied watching it, so I watched it last night. And Psycho Gorman's really fun. It's a really sort of very 80s styled thing. I guess how much you respond to it may depend on what you think about the two lead characters who are both kids. One,
Annoying kids or normal kids?
well, there you go. So this has had great reviews, and I don't disagree with the reviews, but I did kind of find the lead girl, who's obviously very talented-ish, confident actress, about I don't know 9 or 10 years old or something. I did find her a little hard to take. So
Oh,
you may struggle with that, but the concept's great. I mean, this thing from another planet is revived on Earth because of a gemstone. There's a whole backstory about it, and he's basically under the command of this kid, this 9 year old girl. So she gets him to do whatever she wants him to do, and it's a strange mixture of gore. There's some fantastic practical effects in it, some really great. It's probably worth watching just for the practical effects. I think there's probably very minimal CGI.
really?
There's a hilarious brain blob thing creature character that you have to see to appreciate, and that forms part of the punchline, which I thought was really funny. Um, and a lot of it's really really likable, and it's quite a bouncy. It does feel like an 80s film. It feels a bit like something like Critters, I would say, in terms of its look and how it plays out and the lightheartedness. But yeah, and it really is the only thing I could say that's negative, is that I'm not sure if I was overly fond of the lead girl, which is a problem because she's essentially the star. She's the main character. But there's some really good performances. You know, the parents are really funny. There's a crap dad in it that's really funny. But yeah, your tolerance of that kind of child actor, and she's not bad, but she is that kind of child actor, is
Okay.
possibly gonna. I don't think it will ruin it, but the good stuff will still be good, but may change slightly. You're loving it.
I appreciate the heads up on that. As long as I'm
Yeah.
warned about stuff like that, because that annoying children can just ruin things for me straight away if I don't know that they're there. If I know to expect something, I can like, oh, okay, I'll just try and concentrate on the other things.
I think that yeah, that's true, isn't it? And I didn't realize I knew Psycho Goreman looked really fun. I didn't realize like what the star was and stuff. And I've read
No.
reviews where people have said she's fantastic and all that stuff. So it's a very subjective thing. But yeah, I thought a little of her went a long way. But almost everything else was jolly good, jolly hockey sticks, good fun. So yeah,
It does look like a lot of fun. I
I
will
think
check that out. Did you
yeah,
say that's up on Shudder now?
it's on Shutter now. I think
Ooh.
most people will have good time with it, regardless of the other
Yeah,
stuff. Um,
cool.
I, I think that's it. I think I'm dry. I've recently seen it's been a good month of stuff. I liked all of those things I mentioned. So Sarah, over to you.
Oh, yeah, you have been watching an awful lot of stuff.
Oh,
Unfortunately, I have not watched quite so much stuff, but I have got bogged down in the old TV series, as there's a bit of a theme going on with this episode. All
sure.
of a sudden, I've had people like throwing. Well, I've known about these TV series for a while, and I've literally just gone, okay, Creepshow's finished now. I can move on to something else. and all of a sudden I've got 3 things on the go that I'm trying to watch at the same time. So and not all of them are particularly horror, but one of the ones I want to mention is that I've recently started watching the new TV series of The Stand, the new version of The Stand. I'm only 2 episodes into it, and to be fair, it has very good visual effects and stuff. It looks really great. There's some really gory, gruesome wounds and stuff with the virus and stuff that it's all about, but it's going to be one of those ones that's like, I think it's 9 episodes long, and I can already tell that they're like stringing it out. It's going quite slow. It hasn't covered as much stuff as the mini series did of the Stephen King list. And already some of the characters are annoying me, but
which ones like particular?
Harold, the guy that plays Harold Lauder, is a guy called Owen Teague, and he's either really good or just incredibly creepy, because it's been a long time since I've watched The Stand or read The Stand, and I don't remember an awful lot about it. But is Harold a good character or a bad character?
I'm trying to remember as well.
Because he's incredibly creepy in this. And I'm like, is that normal? I don't remember it being that creepy the first time I saw it, or the old season, the series I watched with Rob Lowe and stuff. I just remember, it had Rob Lowe in it. But this one does have like a little bit of eye candy, because it has Alexander Skarsgård in it as the Randall Flagg.
He gets around. Oh, he's Randall Flagg. Okay.
He's Randall Flagg. But he's only just kind of popped up towards like the middle of the 2nd episode, so I haven't seen an awful lot of him yet. I feel like it probably has some promise, and I need to give it some more time. I will watch the rest of it, but it doesn't have very good reviews. A lot of people say, oh my god, I can't believe I just watched this. It's a load of shit.
That's a shame, isn't it? Yeah, because you see, I don't think the miniseries holds up well at all. I thought it was. I mean,
I don't remember like minding it that much. I thought the miniseries was quite good, but I'm not sure that this one's going to go along the same lines. But they haven't covered any of the religious stuff. I think you said like in the old miniseries it put you off because it was very religious.
Oh, it was really cloying. Yeah, in the original, Ruby Dee is Mother Abigail, who they're all trying to get to. Who's this? Do
you want to know who Mother Abigail is in this one?
She's Whoopi Goldberg, right?
It's Whoopi Goldberg, yeah.
You see, I like Whoopi Goldberg, but the original is so sappy with that stuff. It's Hallelujah.
No, they haven't done any of that yet.
I'm hoping Whoopi Goldberg, because she's a very good actress, with the right role. I'm hoping that she doesn't make it as sentimental as the miniseries got, because I had a big problem with that. I also thought Randall Flagg was really miscast, but I'm quite interested in Skarsgård being that character, because I think he could do a good job with it.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll give it a few more episodes at least before I give up. Because it has good points and it has bad points.
Because the cool thing is, and why I was kind of excited, is that the original had to be really tame because it was for network TV. But now, like you said, they can do much more graphic stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it is gruesome.
So that's cool.
Like the disease and stuff makes everyone's throat swells up. They look like giant toads and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of cool and very graphic. So
yeah, that's cool.
It's good that they've gone along those lines. The second thing that I've started watching is The Handmaid's Tale. Now, I've heard a lot about it over like the years since it's been going, and I've had lots of people say, oh my god, you should watch it, and I've always gone, no, something to do with children, isn't it? Not interested. And technically it's not horror, but it's so grim. I'm already well into season 2 now, and I'm kind of like, I'm getting withdrawals because I haven't watched it for a couple of days. But yeah, it's got Elizabeth Moss in it, who was in The Invisible Man, who you said was amazing in that.
She's great, yeah.
She's fabulous in this as well. Everyone in this is like, it's acted so well. It's really good. It's just so grim. It's basically kind of set in a kind of dystopian type-esque future where human population is at risk, and like most women are infertile. So they've basically restructured, or some parts of the world have restructured how they do things. They've become very religious. This does have a very religious like tone to it. There's lots of quotes. They have to keep saying praise be a lot, and they have all these little sayings that's all to do with the fruit of the Lord and stuff like that, which you think is a bit weird, but it all kind of fits into place. But basically the population of women that can have children are basically baby machines, put into slavery and sent to rich couples that can't have children of their own to basically be the conduit of their child and basically have their baby. The man kind of rapes the handmaid, gets her pregnant, and they take the baby away. What kind of stuff that does to women psychologically and stuff, and the punishments they go through if they do anything wrong and step out of line, and it's crazy. And Elizabeth Moss.
Elizabeth Moss. Terrifying.
She's one of the main characters, and she tries so many times to try and escape, and you really root for her. And every time she gets knocked down, and you think that's it, she's just going to give up. But she fights back, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of it goes. I think there's only 3 seasons on Prime, and I think there's 5 in total, but I'm not sure on that.
Yeah, they are quite far along, aren't they?
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
It's certainly a talking point. A lot of people are watching it, aren't they?
Yeah, and I can see why. I've kind of got the bug for it now.
Cool.
That's kind of all I've been watching recently. But I also have a purchase. As things are kind of like opening up and stuff, I've actually bought some gig tickets.
Gig? What is this of which you speak?
I know. I'm not quite sure how it works anymore. Are we all going to have to go wearing masks? How's that going to work?
I don't know. Yeah.
But I'm still like, I don't actually know if this is going to happen, but I'm buying the tickets for, just in the hope that it does. But yes, my favourite band, Send More Paramedics, zombie metal, absolutely brilliant, absolutely love them to bits. They parted ways, gosh, probably about 10 years ago now, awkwardly, and they posted last year, like during the midst of the lockdown and stuff, they just put a little teaser poster up saying 31st of October, Back from the Dead 2021, which will be 20 years since they started. And we're like, oh, okay, we'll keep an eye out. And then, literally a couple of weeks ago, they released some dates, and they've all sold out already.
Wow.
They set it up so they were just doing 2 dates, one in Leeds and one in London. Leeds sold out, so they added another date, and then London has moved up to a different venue.
Blimey.
But it's not just going to be like, if it actually happens, it's going to be amazing. But what's even more amazing about it is that it's on Halloween.
That's so cool. Yeah.
So yes, I've got everything crossed that nothing else happens in the meantime, but who knows? It's something to look forward to.
It is, and you should definitely do that. Yeah, that's cool. And I think one way or the other, hopefully it will. People would be, I don't know, by then it's some way away, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still quite freaked out when I go out into a busy town.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
So I'll be in, it'll be weird how I'm going to feel about it, being in a crowded room with a bunch of people again, but I can't pass it up, really. It has to be done, even if it's the last thing I ever do.
It's what she would have wanted.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they are doing this stuff anyway at different places. They'll do temperature checks at the door and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
they're doing trials of things.
Stuff.
Yeah. So that's, I think
very
it's more likely to happen than at any other time previous to now, isn't it? It's looking better for a lot of reasons.
Let's hope so.
Cool.
But yeah, that is it.
Nice. That's a good slab of recently seen and heard. So cool. By the time of the next podcast, we would have both undoubtedly have watched a couple of key stuff that's coming up, including Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, which has just been dropped on Netflix. So that and a few other things I think will be on the next episode. I'm hoping to go and see the new Saw movie probably next weekend, which is part of the current sort of sheepish cinema reopening program that's going on in the UK. So yeah, in theory, hopefully we can talk about that next time. But thank you, Sarah. So we are on to our main event now, which is the television terror chatette, which we're going to have. We're going to talk about just in brief about a few shows that we've enjoyed over the years that fit into the broad category of TV horror. But first, we're just going to have a little discussion individually and together about two of the shows that stand out for us, like the ultimate, for us, very subjective as always, horror show. And we're going to start with Sarah's choice, which is possibly of no surprise for regular listeners. But Sarah, tell us about your most favoritist horror TV show of all time. Is it of all time?
It is most definitely of all time
Yes.
most favoritist
Just checking.
horror TV show ever. And it is, not a big surprise, but it is The Walking Dead.
Yes.
And I will try very hard not to bore everyone too much, because I'm hoping a lot of you that are listening are quite fond of it as well. Maybe you might not be so fond of it now, but you were fond of it at the start, because it was so good when it first started.
Yeah.
So good. So The Walking Dead for me, it started, I think it aired over here in the UK on Halloween 2010.
Wow.
Based on a graphic novel written by Robert Kirkman about a zombie apocalypse, a group of survivors fighting their way through. I believe it kind of follows along with the comics. It goes in spurts. It goes with the comics and kind of off topic and then back towards the comics, and then also they added a few characters in that weren't in the comics as well. But it's got many characters, amazing and not so amazing actors. I feel like they started off strong and kind of petered out when it came to the actors. The first season was just kind of a tester. It was only about 6 episodes, but you got so much zombie action and stuff like that. It kind of goes along the lines of 28 Days Later. You kind of have a Rick Grimes waking up in the hospital out of a coma, and the whole zombie apocalypse has happened. It does kind of spark of 28 Days Later just to start off with. And it goes along from there. I don't quite know where I want to start with this, so I was just going to ask you, Stephen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I think I've watched much of The Walking Dead, so I was trying to figure out where I got to. I think it was possibly the end of season 8. I'm pretty sure that's it. And I was really on board with it. I mean, I really like you said, the first season's quite interesting. I've always been quite interested in had Frank Darabont stayed on the show, how it may have gone. Strangely enough, I listened to a podcast, Mick Garris's podcast recently, where Frank Darabont was the guest, and although he didn't give, he's probably worn out of talking about it. He's seemingly retired from the making films business because he's had such a jaded experience, not just on The Walking Dead, but he certainly alluded to being very bitter about it and actually just quite melancholic that he never got his way of where the show was going to go. He never got to do that, but that's fair enough. I have to say though, even when he departed, which I think was after season 1, right? Yeah, cool. I mean, season 1, like you said, does start off with that very familiar feel of Day of the Triffids, 28 Days Later, waking up in the hospital, all that kind of stuff. But I think at a certain point in season 2, I was kind of, and I think it's a certain point involving Maggie's daughter from memory. I was like, wow, this is really going somewhere. And then as it evolved.
You mean Carol's daughter?
Not
Sophia.
Maggie. Yes, Carol. Yes, sorry. Yeah, there's a stunning reveal. She goes missing, right? And they're looking for her for part of the season. And Carol's a great character, and I've forgotten the actress already. What's she called?
Hang on, I've got it written down. Melissa McBride.
Yeah, she's outstanding. She was one of the reasons I thought the show was really strong in the years that I watched it.
Yeah, she's gone through so many changes in her character, hasn't she? She started off as this meek and mild, kind of downtrodden wife of a wife beat a husband, basically, and Sophia was her life.
Yeah. that was a really shocking moment. And there's an episode in season 4 which I thought was the best thing they ever did, which also involves children, which I
Yeah.
thought was harrowing and brilliant. But to be honest, I was on board with it much of the way. I mean, I really liked David Morrissey as an actor, and I thought
Yes.
the years or the season and a bit with him as the governor was fantastic. Probably the high point of my Walking Dead watching.
Hmm.
Um, like with anything that's long running, there were points in the seasons that I watched, which again I think is the first 8, where I was like, oh, a bit repetitive, a bit meandering here. I think it came back to life with the arrival of Negan in series 6, which I
Yeah.
thought was after a bit of a fallow patch, and I still maintain that the kind of this finale, which features the horrific death of Glenn, um, is one of the strongest things I've seen on TV. Full stop. You know, I think not just in terms of violence, but I think the whole build up to Negan arriving and
Hmm.
that key sequence, which seems to go on forever. It's such an intense setup, was fantastic. And after that, I'm not so sure. After that, I thought, you know, okay, I feel we're retreading old ground, and this is doesn't seem to be going anywhere. But I would be interested in rejoining it. I just haven't got around to it.
It does.
Um,
It does try and go there again, and several times later on in the series, but it never. I mean, there is a couple of. There is a moment in season 9, end of season 9,
hmm,
that proper has you like what, but it's never actually managed to like go with the same way it went with Glenn.
yeah, that was pretty
It
strong, wasn't it?
it was very 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 emotional. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of people kind of liken it to a soap opera as well. It does have that kind of element to it because there's stuff going on. In season 1, Rick's split up from his or lost his family, and basically his wife and child and his best friend Shane both all feel like, you know, they think he's gone. They think Rick is dead and kind of move on. So Laurie, his wife, is kind of having a bit of an affair with Shane, who was his working partner and like best friend. And then Rick turns up. So there's all this kind of sneaking around going on behind his back in the first season. In season 2, he finds out about it, and then Laurie says that she's pregnant. So you don't know if it's Rick or Shane's. You know, it's very soap
Yeah,
opera-y at
yeah,
times.
yeah.
And I kind of think, having not, I always say to myself after the end of every season, I'm gonna rewatch it from season 1 and, you know,
Mm.
remember everything. But as usual, I haven't. I will say this though: after season 11, I'm gonna watch the whole lot. We'll see if that
Is
actually happens.
is season 11 the current one, right?
No, that's the new one
Oh,
that's coming out.
oh, I'm with you. Okay.
The one we're up to season 10 at the moment,
Mm.
but season 11 is apparently supposed to be the last season.
Wow, is that official? Like,
Not sure.
wow,
Don't
okay.
quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I keep forgetting. I remember there being some seasons early on that I wasn't very keen on, but going back and writing some notes and stuff on them, I'm like, oh god, yeah, I remember that one. That was an amazing episode, and that was an
Mm.
amazing episode. The whole, I kind of feel like a couple of episodes in season 2, when they were at the farm, were a bit boring. But then you forget
Yeah,
how much happened there and stuff, with like Carl getting shot and Shane backstabbing Otis and stuff, and the well walker and all that kind of stuff. I'm
mm.
like, oh, suddenly it all comes flooding back.
Yeah.
And
There's
season
definitely periods, isn't there, where it seemed to be treading water, but and I think it was season 2 that I was thinking of. But then there's that point, and definitely the episode with Carol, and it
yeah,
really delivered, and it kept on going.
and yeah, it kept on going into season 3 with the whole prison
Yeah,
sequence. That's probably my favorite season, I think.
I remember that being really good. That's got some shocking moments, right?
Yeah, because well, that's Rick starting to turn as well. You know, he starts off as a goody goody, do things by the book, and by season 3, you're starting to see him. You say losing it, going into survival mode, really,
Mm.
protecting his family and protecting his friends, not letting too
Yeah,
many people get close because of what happens, and then he meets like the governor and stuff,
yeah, it's fantastic.
and yeah, just enjoyed it so much throughout the years. It's something that you just keep going back to. The only thing that annoys me is that they have to keep breaking it up. the seasons, don't they? They kind of split it because there's so many episodes. It would
Yes.
possibly do better for them to kind of cut down on the episodes.
Yeah, maybe that's what, because it's strange now. Is it 16 a season with The Walking Dead?
Oh no, it goes up and up and up in some
More
of them.
than it.
It gets into the 20s.
Yeah, which used to be the norm, didn't it, for TV series from
Yeah.
America? But now it seems quite old-fashioned because now a lot of them, they don't have to meet that quota. Obviously, for Netflix and stuff, there's 10 episodes or something. Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe in some of those seasons, it would have benefited from being a shorter run. Yeah. I remember the prison season as being really strong, and there's some great actors, isn't there? Like, is it Scott Wilson that plays Herschel?
Yes.
Yeah, his character was really strong.
There was some great characters in the first season that you kind of forget about. Do you remember T-Dog
I think so.
from season
Yeah.
1? Yeah, I miss him.
Yes.
He was great. They never really managed to replace him. And then, of course, you've got Michael Rooker as Merle.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Lasted up until season 3. I mean, he was great in the first couple of episodes, getting like locked onto the roof and stuff. That was cool. And his death was quite traumatic as well, considering like he and Daryl, those characters were never in the comics. You know, they kind of wrote them in for that, and you know that was a very touching episode for me when like Daryl had to put his own brother down.
Yeah. Yeah, there's been some powerful episodes for sure. Yeah, it's an excellent show. Yeah, it's, I suppose any show that runs as long as it does, it's going to have the peaks and troughs. It's a shame. I suppose is the fan base, as it always tends to be, partly quite hostile to it these days.
Yeah, that is the
It's a
way at the
shame.
moment. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't done itself any favors. I think losing Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick, was basically what did it. Because they then they kind of like took on a load of unknown actors and stuff to come in and try and replace him. And I have to admit, like the acting and stuff in these last couple of seasons, with the exception of a few, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Maggie, who play Lauren Cohen, who plays Maggie. You know, I'm not liking the new characters. The acting is terrible. There was an episode recently of one of the new characters that they introduced called Princess, and it was awful. It was an awful episode. I was like, I can't believe they've done this.
Yeah, I guess in the struggle to fill the gaps of who's left, and
But then they brought in Samantha. Is it Samantha Morgan who played Alpha? And she was scary, proper scary.
Yeah, that's cool. What's your favorite season out of all of them?
Favorite season out of all of them, definitely going with the prison for season 3. I season 3, season 4, and season 5. I think because the season 4 thing was really interesting. They had the whole flu epidemic in the prison. Then the prison was when the governor and stuff dies, and poor old Herschel gets his head chopped off.
Yes, that's shocking.
And then they split up into groups, and then you have episodes of them like separated. I thought that was really, really good.
Yeah.
And that's when you have the Carol episode with 2 girls.
Which is extraordinary. Yeah, I mean, at its best, and I think I checked it, that's The Grove is the title I was trying to think of. I think at its best, there was a sense that anything could happen. And I think in season 2 with the reveal of Carol's daughter, but then especially that episode, certainly along the lines of the governor season was really powerful. But
going into Terminus when they encountered the cannibals and stuff in Terminus, that was I quite enjoyed that as well.
Yeah. I liked it when it was at its most kind of not heartless, but maybe hopeless, and I think The Grove was that. I think the stuff with the 2 little girls was really shocking, and it totally got you.
And they introduced some great characters that have still lasted. You have Abraham, Rosita, and Eugene. I think that was the best 3 newer characters that they had. introduced. Everyone after that has never been quite as good, apart from Jesus. Jesus was cool.
Yeah, yeah. Is he still around? I've lost track.
Nope.
Okay, not so much. Not giving anything away, but he's not.
No.
They did a cool thing, didn't they, with the whole Glenn thing, where there was, I don't know how many episodes it was before he actually got unpleasantly killed, but he effectively died, but it was a fake out, wasn't it, in a few
Yeah,
episodes?
false death. Ended up falling underneath a bin.
And there was a really, and it
That
was
was
clever
season
because
6.
season 6, because I like the idea of, because a lot of shows do this, and the one I'm going to talk about has certainly done this, but shows do it where they're like, oh yeah, this is a shocking moment. Actually, he's all right. Here's an explanation as to how he got away. And
Yeah.
at the time I was going, no, throwing tomatoes at the TV, the usual
Yeah,
stuff.
I felt a bit cheated because I was like, no, that's not how it happens. We all know that's not how it happens. Don't try and mess around with us.
Exactly. But I
Because they,
thought the genius of it was to then deliver what it did. That was a
yeah,
brilliant way of making people get
exactly.
a bit pissed off and then saying,
And the
actually,
fact, the fact that you weren't too sure what was going to happen because they did 2 and 1. Because comic wise, that's not how Abraham dies. Abraham dies the same way that Denise did, with an arrow in the eye.
yeah,
And when that happened to Denise, we all kind of went, I'm pretty sure like they're building up to something's different's going to happen, and then you're like, oh, is it Glenn, is it Abraham? And then Abraham goes and you're like, no, because he was such a brilliant character. I loved Abraham so much. He was so funny. And then straight after that, when you're getting over that, you're like, oh, it's okay, Glenn's going to be okay, it's all right. And
yeah.
then they do him as well, and you're like, no.
Man, that's the whole Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo episode is just astonishing. From memory, I don't know, you'll know this better than me, but I think over here when it was shown on Sky, it was slightly censored, and they it seemed that the show got in a bit of hot water for going a bit too far, and I was always annoyed by that. I was like, what? It's called The Walking Dead. This is 6 seasons in. What do you expect?
Exactly.
It is a
Yeah. No,
shocking moment of violence.
I think it really is. But I think because it was like to a living human being, and they showed it more graphically,
Yeah,
where they hadn't done so much with the other characters. There's graphic gore throughout with the walkers, who
yeah,
I'm going to come on to,
that's the difference,
because
isn't it?
I think my very, very favourite characters in the whole of The Walking Dead, it has to be the walkers.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah.
Um, just to check, has Greg Nicotero always done the makeup on The Walking Dead?
As far as I know, he's always had input. I
Yeah,
don't know if he's necessarily always been there, but when it comes to like some of the main ones, I think he has input throughout. I think he even has input on the spin-off shows.
yeah, I thought so too. Because he directs a lot of Walking Dead, doesn't he? Often,
He does, yeah.
when I was watching it, you'd always know it would be a kind of exceptional episode because you'd see the director credit at the start for him because he tended to get those really strong, either character episodes or the really strong horrific
Walker
event episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, he does good with his walkers. They look amazing. I mean, there are so many that he's done. Do you remember Bicycle Gal from
Yes, I
season 1?
do. Season one,
And
yeah, wow.
Addie Miller, the little gal.
Yeah, that was quite haunting. Yeah, this is an except, and I'm sure you're the same, but now we're really spoiled because we have all this stuff, on this or that. But if you'd have told, even though I've not watched it for a while, but if you'd have told, like, I don't know, the 10-year-old me that there was going to be a show all about zombies on normal TV, with the kind of stuff that The Walking Dead does and the kind of makeup, I don't know, probably shit an entire brick because it's
Absolutely. You'd be like, no, I
unimaginable.
don't believe you. That
This
would
is on
never happen.
TV. It's kind of astonishing that now we just take it for granted, but there was not a chance that a show as graphic as this would ever have been on TV when I was growing up. It's just
No.
not even close.
Unheard of, yeah.
It's just the stuff of Romero, literally, wasn't it? It was,
Hmm.
and it's obviously paying homage to a lot of that stuff, which is cool.
Yes, definitely. I mean, he does put in his own little like tributes to various Romero movies. I think there's a couple of them. I think it was the Alexandria time, kind of season 7, season 8, I believe, where they kind of definitely put in some obvious ones, like the checked shirt zombie that you're like, is definitely from Dawn of the Dead.
Ah, yeah, of course.
They did a little tribute in Alexandria one of the episodes, I think when Alexandria first gets blown up, when gets overrun by walkers, and basically there's explosions and fires going off, and the walkers just standing there looking up at the sky like they do in Land of the Dead at the sky flowers.
Yeah.
A lot of people pick up on stuff like that, and I think they do like to play around with it and stuff. I mean, there's been a lot of ones where people have said, is that supposed to be so and so? There was one in season 1 on the bus, one of the walkers on the bus, that everyone went, is that supposed to be Jim Carrey?
Wow.
I was like, it isn't, but it does kind of look a little bit like him.
Wow. Yeah. It's and how would you say, because it's now it's a hard thing to keep a show like this sustained for such a long time, but in terms of the quality of the zombies alone, the walkers alone, do you think that's been consistently strong? Are they still
Sure.
finding clever ways to come up with
Yes.
something interesting?
Absolutely. You know, they've kind of like blended them into trees, blended them into the
Wow.
ground, like burnt zombie, or sorry, I shouldn't call them zombies, walkers, wandering around, literally like rotting before your eyes, you know. As soon as someone grabs hold of them, they disintegrate and stuff. So you can tell how much time has gone on, how much thought they've put into it when it comes to stuff like that. And that's what I think is the genius thing about it. That's why I still love it.
Definitely. As a zombie fan, this is, absolutely. I totally get that. And am I right in thinking it's largely, even the stuff that looks kind of incredible, it's pretty much, as far as the zombie makeup stuff go, it's practical, right?
Yeah.
They don't do CGI for the actual zombies or walkers?
No, not so much. Only if it's necessary to add in like certain wounds, like them like tearing themselves apart, you know. They'll have like green screen and stuff on that. One of my favorite walkers from season 7, episode 10 is Winslow, who was one of the scavengers pets that they'd kept, and they basically like welded a spiked helmet to his head and stuck loads of blades through him. They had to use a bit of like CGI and stuff when he was fighting with Rick.
Yeah, sure.
And stuff like that. But yeah, predominantly it's all prosthetics for as much as they can. But when it comes to the actual gut spilling and stuff, they kind of add that in a little bit later, depending on, you know, what's happened to them.
Yeah, which I kind of get. I mean, as I moan about CGI, but this is obviously and as with anything we're talking about in the TV section, it's running to an extraordinary schedule. I mean, the TV shows are cranked out on a mental schedule, aren't they, with very little room for maneuver. So I guess effects wise, this is one of the most ambitious shows out there.
Sure. I think they probably had to use a fair amount of like CGI on Michonne's pet zombies that you first meet without their, you know, they've had their lower arms cut off and their jaws removed. And I think later on in the series, they then decided they were going to introduce Shiva, the tiger, which is King Ezekiel's pet.
Yes, I saw.
So
yeah,
obviously
I remember that.
you can't have a live tiger, I don't think. But I think they did pretty good on that.
It wasn't too jarring, was it?
No.
I think I got used to it because obviously the thing you're thinking is, well, that's not a real tiger because it can't be.
Surely it can't be. Yeah.
But I think there's been much worse.
And they didn't string it out too much. You know, she probably wasn't going to last too long, and she didn't.
Yeah. And what's your favourite? Oh, I want to ask actually, do they ever call them zombies in the show, or is it only ever walkers?
Walkers. I think they have other groups have different names for them and stuff, but I've never heard them called zombies.
And is that a holdover from the comic book?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, what else were you going to say?
Oh, yeah. Oh no, I'd forgotten what this.
Oh,
but yeah,
fun.
No, that's okay. And have you read? So the comic books are over, right? They've stopped writing them.
Yeah.
He stopped writing them, and so now, although for a while the show has kind of been free reign anyway, is that right?
It has, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it has. I think the Whisperers and stuff were. To be fair, I'm not that up on the comics. I do have a load of them, but not in any sequence and stuff. So it's just kind of hearing from other people. But the Whisperers were definitely in the comics. But yeah, it has finished now, so I don't quite know where they're going. I think they have a big thing. I think this next season will be more about the Commonwealth, which is a larger, like almost massively popularized community of people that have their own government, they have their own military. I
Hmm.
think that's where they're going with this for the next season.
Yeah. Which may be the last, right?
Which may be the last, yeah.
Wow. Do you know how the comic ends?
No, I don't.
Okay. Would you want to know, or I mean, there's no guarantee they're going to use the same ending, I guess, or
Yeah,
maybe
no,
they can't.
I don't think they can now. No, I
No.
think because they have gone off on so much of a tangent. They've sent Michonne off to find Rick. I don't know how that worked in the comics, because obviously, like, Rick didn't leave in the comics. It was just
Yeah.
Andrew Lincoln, as the actor, decided he needed to take time out, which is where I'm hearing, like, oh, he's coming back for season 11. And you're like, yeah, okay, because they kind of left it hanging. There was another slight disappointment on what happened to Rick.
Oh, man. Yeah, I thought he was gone for good. Yeah.
And then they wrote Maggie out, and then she's back again, which I think she has come from the Commonwealth, so that's where you're getting that kind of story from.
Yeah.
But yeah, we shall see. They've like chucked another like bombshell out to UK watchers. I think I've noticed in the last couple of days they've been saying that they're moving it off Fox and it's going to Disney Plus in the UK
Wow.
for season 11. So I don't have Disney Plus.
That makes sense because Disney own Fox now.
Ugh, it doesn't make sense. Just for one more season.
Yeah, we have Disney Plus here on the excuse that we have a child here. But Disney Plus has got interesting, Sarah, because Disney Plus, because it now owns Fox, has got loads of grown up stuff now. So they have like a separate section called Star, which is where you find like all sorts of mad shit.
That's not the Star that used to have like Ash versus Evil Dead.
No, that's Stars with a Z. Yeah,
Stars with a Z. Yeah,
Star. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm guessing that's what will happen then. But on the positive side, that means they'll have the entire catalogue of Walking Dead. Although I guess you've got those on Blu-ray or DVD or Blu-ray. Anyway.
Yeah, every year.
Yeah. Which is cool because this stuff, it's on streaming, then it's gone, and then it's,
exactly. I like to collect it and have it forever.
I think it's going to be ever more important because what's happening these days is that in some cases they're changing things from old stuff. I think Disney Plus famously censored Daryl Hannah's bottom in Splash. They CGI'd some extra hair so it covered her bottom in a scene where she walks into the sea. So the purest versions of these shows, if they ever decide to dabble with them, will be on the disc. So that's cool.
That is what I'm slightly worried about, but I suppose I could possibly be persuaded to get Disney Plus for The Walking Dead and maybe The Mandalorian.
I like that's meant to be. I haven't seen it, but everyone says that's awesome, and you don't even have to be a Star Wars fan to enjoy it, which is cool. I like the idea of it going to Disney Plus and like I don't know, Rick suddenly have like a talking aardvark companion or something. Hang on, the show's changed.
Yeah, no, don't even go there.
A musical number halfway through the climax of a scene.
Yeah, they would. That would not put. Yeah, that would not surprise me, to be fair, because the amount of times they've messed things up with it, and said they're going to do something and then they don't, or they said that we're definitely not doing this and then they do it anyway. I blame Scott Gimple for that.
It's Scott Gimple, the showrunner.
Yes.
Still,
he's kind of worked his way up. Yeah.
See, it's interesting because I love Frank Darabont's stuff. I mean, his movies are great, Shawshank and Green Mile, and especially The Mist, which is we talked about a lot on the Stephen King show. So I do kind of almost wish that Darabont had stayed on board. But yeah, so is there a lot of controversy around Scott generally, Scott Gimple?
I think with me there is, yeah. I just generally find him annoying because of the little tweaks that he does, and I think he wants to turn it into, well, it already is a ginormous commercial massive cash cow, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think sometimes he kind of thinks more of that than actually concentrating on the storyline and things making sense.
Yeah, because this happens all the time, but so it's not unique to Walking Dead. But I do wonder. I have seen some of Fear of the Walking Dead, and I actually liked it. I saw maybe the first 3, or maybe slightly more.
Yeah.
And now there's the third spin-off or a third series, isn't there? The World something, the
World Beyond.
The World Beyond. Yeah, that's a lot of pies to keep up in the air, or plates.
It is.
To spin. whatever the phrase is. Maybe not pies. That's yeah. Have you watched The World Beyond yet?
Yes, I've watched all of that. Because that didn't have very good reviews, and although it is very Walker light, and a lot of people said the acting was annoying, I didn't actually mind it.
Oh, okay.
But I have still stopped with Fear the Walking Dead. I'm still only on season 4. It got so boring.
Oh, that's a shame because it started so strong, didn't it?
Yeah, and so many people say now that it's amazing. So hopefully someone down the line will go, no, carry on, you keep going. But I have stopped with that one. But yeah, I wonder what will happen next. Hopefully there won't be too many more spin-offs from it, because I don't quite know, how much longer they can keep it interesting.
Yeah. I suppose I wonder if The Walking Dead does end with this season, if the others will just carry on and maybe one of those will become something extraordinary. I don't know. It's
Who knows?
it's wide open, isn't it? Hey, what's your
It is.
favorite ever episode? Do you have an individual episode?
Oh, I don't have a very favourite episode, but I do have a lot of ones that mean a lot. Obviously, Days Gone By, the very first episode, probably is just a massive standout for me. Just because that's how it started.
Does that end with the horse sequence? Is that the episode, the bit with the horse?
Where the horse gets eaten?
Yeah, that.
I think that's episode 2. That is when
okay.
he rides down the street and then comes across the horde, doesn't he? And then the episode after that, his horse gets overrun and he ends up in the tank. The tank's amazing. The walker in the tank is brilliant.
Yeah.
Basically, I could watch season 1 over and over, I think, because it was quite short. It was only 6 episodes, and there were so many key things that happened. Meeting Glenn, Merle, coming across his family and stuff again. But Cherokee Rose, season 2, episode 4, is a massive kind of. I think that's when everyone decided that they loved Daryl.
Yeah.
Just how he was searching for Sophia and stuff. That was before Sophia's. You find out that she was kept in a barn,
which is harrowing. Maybe that's the moment. That's the greatest.
Another one that sticks in my mind is Killer Within, season 3, episode 4, which is Laurie's death.
Oh yes, that's really graphic, right?
Yeah,
I remember that being horrific.
That hit me so bad. Not necessarily her death, just Rick's reaction afterwards. I think I was an actual mess. The Sorrowful Life is Mel's episode where Mel turns and Daryl has to put him down. Then you have The Grove, as you say, Carol and Lizzie and Mika looking at the flowers.
That's absolutely astonishing.
The Day Will Come When You Won't Be is Glenn and Abraham. Everybody had something to say about that one. New Best Friends, which is the Winslow episode where Rick fights a really cool walker. I love that episode. And then going on later on into the series, The Calm Before. So it's kind of split into 2 episodes. So you've got The Calm Before and then The Storm After. The Calm Before it runs along kind of normally and you think it's not really going anywhere, but at the end it's quite horrific because that's when the Whisperer's alpha goes, she snaps, and they basically take out at least 9 characters.
Whoa.
And how they do it is quite shocking. It's pretty cool. And I think because season 10 wasn't quite as good, apart from the end of the Whisperers, Negan has a lot to do with that. You actually finally get to see you hear Negan's backstory. The final episode of season 10 is Negan's backstory, which I think they did very cleverly because you could obviously tell it was recorded in lockdown.
Yeah.
Because it's, very short on the characters, and they use Jeffrey Dean Morgan's real life wife as Lucille. And you get to find out what he used to do before the whole apocalypse happened, and it's quite surprising. They could have done more with it, but the way the other episodes had gone in the run-up to that, it was a bit of a breath of fresh air, because the others were a little bit stale.
Yeah.
So that brought it back up, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah. It is. I think the thing to remember, and the same will be true of the choice that I've made, is it's such a long running show. There's going to be troughs and peaks, ever more, isn't there? It's pretty good that they've sustained something like this for so long anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to rewatch the early seasons, but I do feel an urge to catch up on where I left off if I can
Yeah, I think you'd pick it up pretty quickly.
do that. Yeah. A lot of the seasons tend to be kind of resets anyway, don't they? They'll find a new location or something, and it's
Yeah,
almost a
it's
new
started
start.
again. Yeah.
Which is something that used to happen a lot on Buffy. Actually, there was a sense, and I think with Buffy though, I think it was a sense that they never knew they were coming back for another season. So they were like, well, we'll pretend this is the end. Oh right, we're coming back. Right, let's start on.
Let's start
um,
again.
but that's, and I suppose that's the case with a lot of shows. There's never a guarantee that a show will be renewed, and so many disappear that something like The Walking Dead running as long as it has is pretty much a rarity, isn't it? Not many shows, especially, maybe this is the only genre show that's lasted so long. Geez, I
I
don't
feel
know if
like it
that's,
is.
I
Yeah.
suppose things like Dark Shadows, it's a bit different, but Dark Shadows run forever. But this is, in this format, it's probably the longest one.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it's great. Despite all its flaws, it's still one of my favourites. And I could talk about it forever, but I don't want to bore you all.
With the what would the dream guest be if there was like the ultimate Walking Dead convention and you got to meet X? Who would the X be?
Well, funny you should say that. I have been to a couple of the Walker Stalker cons that they
Yes.
used to do back in the day. And to be fair, my favourite person to listen to was Greg Nicotero.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I'm not the kind of person that runs up to meet people because I'm very scared and very socially awkward. So I would rather, sit in on the question and answers type thing. And he's
Sure.
always so animated. He will show you like little videos that he's taken on his phone whilst they were recording and stuff. He's got all these great behind the scenes stories, and he's so passionate and so clever and just approachable and friendly. Charlie Adlard, one of the illustrators for the comics, he was great. Listening to Andrew Lincoln and Chandler Riggs on stage talking and stuff was great. Norman Reedus is always, very charismatic. He never did any of the Q&As or anything, but he would always like stand up on his table so everyone could see him and stuff, because over the years they got a little bit more guarded. You weren't allowed to look at people unless you paid money to see them.
Wow.
That kind of a thing. I think David Morrissey waved at me.
Oh, David Morrissey's the
Which was
best.
nice. Yeah, it was cool. One of the other guys, Ross Marquand, nice name, who plays Aaron, is like the most amazing impersonator. He can impersonate anyone, and he's very, very funny to listen to.
That's cool. And I guess the conventions will carry on whether the show ends or not, won't they? Because they
Yeah,
tend
but
to.
unfortunately, they do still go on, but the big names are not there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even think Norman Reedus was at the last one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, that was a good guide through how many years? 11 years of The Walking Dead. Yeah.
Yep.
2010. Wow, that doesn't seem that long ago. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Sarah. I mean, any final thoughts on The Walking Dead?
No, it's cool. I think we should move on to your choice now.
Oh, well, it's it's just a minor thing of mine.
It's a
Yeah.
nice show.
But there's been loads of horror shows over the years, and there's lots I've enjoyed, but there's really only been one that on the same level as your Walking Dead fanaticism that matches that, which is the X-Files. Okay.
Hey.
Part of its timing, like it was available, it was on TV. It started in 1993 when I was 15. Yeah. So that was quite important. There wasn't really any other shows like it, and there hadn't really been in my lifespan. There were a few things around, like in the 80s, we had Freddy's Nightmares, the Elm Street spin-off, which lasted a couple of seasons and wasn't very good. And it would turn up occasionally at 3 a.m. on ITV, but you'd never know if the episodes were in order. There was a Friday the 13th series, which was kind of cool, which was about a haunted, or rather an antique shop that sold cursed goods. It had nothing to do with Jason. But it was quite cool because it was a different horror story every week about a cursed pen or something. Tales from the Crypt had started in the late 80s, and it's sort of dribbled over here. I can't remember what station it was on, but it was kind of available. and was able to push the envelope a bit because it was made for cable, so they could, have swearing and stuff and a bit more gore. But the X-Files was I suppose, the major genre show that was accessible, and it was actually on prime time BBC Two. It switched to BBC One when it got really popular. And I watched it from the very beginning because it seemed interesting. I was like, oh, cool, I'll watch this first episode. And it blew my mind. It was like, oh, wow, this is so eerie. I consider the X-Files a horror show because it is. I mean, it's regarded as a bit of both, I suppose. It was created by Chris Carter as, very simply, he referred to it as he wanted to make a show that was scary that he could show on a Friday night. Simple as that. He loved a 70s show called Kolchak, which was basically a Monster of the Week show where this shabby detective guy would be investigating unusual cases of werewolves and stuff. So you can see the influence of that on X-Files. X-Files is maybe half and half like it, I suppose. It's half this enormous rolling story about a massive conspiracy involving the government and aliens and family relations of Mulder and Scully, who you probably know are the two heroes. And that kind of running story would be intertwined with single standalone episodes. So they called the main story that runs throughout the seasons the mythology or the myth arc, which got confusing. And because the show went on for a while, you got the sense that, hang on a minute, they never thought the show would run this long, so they're making it up as they're going along.
Yeah.
There was a point where, I mean, those episodes were outstanding. That's usually where the biggest drama would happen. So that's usually where Mulder or Scully's family members would get shockingly killed. The biggest twists and turns would be in those episodes. They don't necessarily hold up as well when you rewatch them. You kind of have to rewatch them in order. And you do get the syndrome of a long-running show where, they'll change things up. They'll say, actually, Mulder's sister is not a giant aardvark cauliflower creature. She's actually his adopted brother's asparagus or something. There'd be backtracking. Dead characters would come back to life because they realized, people liked the cigarette smoking man. Oh, he's actually alive. He's just horribly disfigured. But he got blown up by squirrels, didn't he, last year? So they would cheat a lot, but I always forgave it for that because it was so consistently good. But the bread and butter of the show, away from the big conspiracy, the sci-fi stuff, the alien invasion and all that kind of stuff, the bread and butter stuff that was strong over 11 seasons and 2 movies was the standalone episodes, which were usually horror orientated. And from the start, they really were. And these were kind of that format, thing of the week, monster of the week, horror of the week, whatever. And Mulder and Scully would go to a different part of America. They'd find out there'd been some strange deaths, and they would find out it was blah, blah, blah. And I think that the scene was set by, I think most people who are not necessarily X-Files fans but have watched it will remember this, but the scene was kind of set early on in season 1 with the character of Eugene Victor Toombs, who was this kind of liver-eating mutant human kind of character that could squeeze through tiny spaces. So basically, even if you had a secure locked house, you could squeeze down the chimney or through an air vent, break in and eat your liver. And he needed a certain amount of livers or something like that. He'd come out every 30 years. And genuinely creepy home invasion element for kind of horror-starved TV of the early 90s. To watch this was kind of mind-blowing, really, that something so sinister would be on at 9 o'clock on a Monday night or something.
Yeah.
There was a big Silence of the Lambs influence. So, Scully's character is kind of like Clarice Starling, a smart, tough female FBI agent with a buddy, the kind of popular buddy format of her having this very different partner, as in all those action movies. I'm too old for this shit, like the Lethal Weapon stuff. Two very mismatched, but ultimately great friends, possibly a romantic element, which I think ultimately they were wrong to follow through with, because it was always best when they weren't a couple. As soon as they did the moonlighting thing of saying, well, actually, they really love each other, the show struggled a little, but that was much later on. But really, the best stuff was them going to a weird place, finding some kind of monster or serial killer, and the show was genuinely scary. I mean, there's so many great episodes. The Tombs episode is really notable. They did all sorts of things. They did zombies, a lot of mutations. They did just general serial killers. There's a a great episode in season 1 called Beyond the Sea with Brad Dourif as a serial killer. It has a kind of supernatural element, but mostly it's this very Silence of the Lambs stuff with Scully talking to him in prison. And he's terrific as he always is.
Yeah, he's very creepy and trancy.
Yes, yeah, and I think around that time, that was mid season 1. Around that time, when I was watching it, I think a lot of people were saying me like, "Wow, this is really not like what we're used to seeing on TV." It also looked like a movie every week. So nowadays, TV looks amazing. You watch something like them, you're like, "Wow, this could be on the cinema." But back then, TV kind of mostly looked like Coronation Street.
Sure.
Even American TV was really bland. You watch 80s shows from America, a lot of them are really hard to sit through because it's so slow and strange, flat.
Sitcom-y and
But
that's why it was so popular.
I think so. It led the way. I mean, I think Twin Peaks was before this. I loved that pretty much almost as much, and that was very cinematic. But I think there were 2 shows that really saw TV going in a different direction, both from America. One was this, and one was ER, which had these incredible crane shots and moving camera. It was like Casualty on speed or something.
Yeah, so much more interesting than the UK version.
Always, Casualty. The UK equivalent would be, "Oh, Jeff, do you think you should be going up that ladder?" "Oh yeah, I'll be all right." And then a very slow pace.
He's not going to be all right.
Yeah. And you'd think, Jesus Christ, wow, this feels like I'm having a heart attack, an anxiety attack watching this. And X-Files looked beautiful every week, incredibly well lit, shot in Canada in these beautiful locations, kind of doubling for America with all this kind of camera work you'd normally get in Hollywood movies. So it looked great. It was genuinely frightening at its peak, and it was using a lot of stuff from horror movies. There's an episode in season 1 which is very much like The Thing, called Ice, which you've seen. If you've watched a few recently,
I watched that one, and obviously, like rewatching it and stuff, you notice so many actors that are now gone on to do other things, and noticing in Ice, you have Xander Berkeley in it, who played Gregory in The Walking Dead.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So a couple of them pop up, and then Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose is actually like I don't suppose you've ever watched. It's an American like comedy sitcom type thing called Everybody Loves Raymond, with the old dad Frank.
Yes,
and he is Clyde Bruckman.
Oh, it's such a that's
and he
one of my
still
favorites.
looks just as old. But I've just looked it up, and obviously, like you say, it came out in 1993. So you were 15, I was a couple of years younger, and I just noticed that episode 1 pilot came out on the 10th of September 1993, which was my 13th birthday.
Oh, that's mad, isn't it? That's just ridiculous. Yeah, I can remember it so well. Like my dad was really into it as well. Although I think he kind of, when they went to a few comedy episodes, he tuned out a bit, but he was really into it. Yeah, I remember it so well. And the cast's amazing.
Yeah, amazing. My brother was more into X-Files than I was. I was scared of quite a lot of episodes. Anything to do with alien abduction at that time, I was petrified, and some of them just like stuck with me. But yeah, my brother absolutely loved it, mostly for Gillian Anderson.
She's fab. I mean, they're both great. I think
he had posters of her on his wall. But yeah, there's so many of them that just like stick in my mind that I did find like quite horrific at the time, and rewatching some of them, I'm like, oh. When you said, "Oh, the host," I was like, "Oh God, I remember that one."
Yes, I think that's it. You know, it had everything. I thought they did a nice bit of casting. Yeah, War of the Coprophages, which is really funny. I mean, by the time
it's funny now.
It's hilarious. That's when they really are starting to deconstruct the show and do much more kind of quite sophisticated, especially at the time, parody episodes. The cockroach episode is genuinely funny, and also really gross, which I think is the stuff you just wouldn't get. Yeah, I mean, the host is early season 2, and by then, especially with the host, there was a sense that they've obviously done well and they've got more freedom to be more gruesome. And the host is genuinely horrific. And again, now we're used to seeing stuff as mad as the bludgeoning on The Walking Dead. But back then, TV was very strict, especially American network TV. So this stuff you just wouldn't see. But this had these grotesque bite wounds and people vomiting up fluke worms. And this genuinely disturbing monster with that awful mouth.
Yeah,
who
but he's not actually in it all that much, and he doesn't do a lot, does he? You just seem just like floating down tubes, and I was petrified when I was younger of that. And then
what?
rewatching it, I was like, oh, it's still gross, but he doesn't do anything. You feel a little bit sorry for him.
Yeah, exactly. There's a great moment in The Host where you realize that they almost go to the stage of, because when you're watching the X-Files, you're like, okay, well, the FBI Monster of the Week. Wait a minute, if they capture this, what are they going to do? Put handcuffs on it? And there's a moment in The Host where you realize that the fluke worm monster is actually in a room at the FBI because they've kind of got it in an interrogation room. You know, so,
Yeah, hiding
so
behind a tube.
how does this work? So can you account for where you were on the 15th of March? Which I think was really cute. But yeah, they started to go to much more gruesome places when they'd been around for a bit. There's a great episode in the middle of season 2 called Die Hand, Die Verletzt, which is a really disturbing episode because it's about basically a bunch of satanic or Satan worshippers on the PTA at a high school, and it's kind of played for laughs, which is quite strange, and it's quite bold because it's Satanism in Bible Belt America. Obviously, doesn't go down too well,
Mm.
but there's some weird shit in it, and there's a whole sequence where a girl is talking about awful sexual abuse she's had from when she was a very small child, which has actually implanted memory, so it never happened. But it's all part of what seems to be playing the idea for a very, very dark joke, which is that these prim and proper parents that have a problem with Grease, a stage version of Grease for their high school, having like words like shit in it, but they're actually worshipping Satan and sacrificing babies. So I thought that was possibly one of the darkest jokes in TV at the time.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a good sense of humour.
it really did. And by the time you get to season 3, they're doing full on parodies. There's a great
Yeah.
vampire parody in season 5 called Bad Blood. Um, this show is where Vince Gilligan started out, and he tended to do the parody-ish episodes, or the episodes that made fun of Mulder and Scully,
Mm-hmm.
and of course later did Breaking Bad. Um, Clyde Bruckman's Fun and Repose is another example of that kind of balance of
Mm-hmm.
humor with the phony psychic, but the sadness of his character, and also making fun of Mulder and Scully a bit,
Yeah.
who themselves are really cleverly cast. You know, you've got a very kind of traditionally handsome
Mm-hmm.
guy like David Duchovny who's playing a character who's very lonely, and there's a running joke about how much porn he has at home, and he's
He's
a
kind of,
total geek.
yeah, he's a geek and a bit of a nerd. Yeah.
He essentially is the audience. You know, he is me, or he is the audience in a character sense, in the sense that, you know, he's nerdishly obsessed with conspiracies that may or may not be true, and with chasing aliens that may or may not be real. But obviously, he's played by a conventionally handsome man. And then you've got Gillian Anderson, who was quite famously at the time cast against type because the network wanted someone more conventionally, I don't know, blonde, etc. But
Mm.
she was not necessarily the kind of leading lady you'd have in an American show at that time, but then anyway became a sex symbol by being obviously a great actress and a great character in the show as well as everything else. So I think they did a cool thing with the casting. Um, it's also, I watched it, I haven't rewatched many recently, but I watched the one with the exploding pus boils, which was really disgusting, called,
Oh, Emasculata.
yes, that one is genuinely
Yeah.
disgusting.
It is
Yeah.
gross. Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think I didn't watch as many as I wanted to, but I got up to was it Home in
Home.
season 4, the
Yes.
kind of like inbred freaky family, a little bit like kind of Wrong Turny Hills Have Eyes type thing going on.
Yeah. Home is really a massive kind of benchmark for the series. They never repeated it on American network TV, um, because it was so controversial at the time, because it went way out there again for
Mm.
TV at the time. This was season 4, so it would have been 97-ish, I suppose.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But it really, it has the kind of content you'd normally only find in things like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, with the limbless mum under the
mm-hmm,
bed that's
mm-hmm.
wheeled out to breed, and the grotesque, and indeed some really grotesque scenes of violence that are set to nice, easy listening pop
Yeah.
tunes like Johnny Mathis. Um, so yeah, Home has never repeated it. It was hugely controversial at the time. Fox kind of apologized for it and had a warning at the start when they showed it, the only time they showed it. And in England, on the BBC, I remember they cut the shot of the dead baby, and I think they cut a couple of the other scenes as well. It was certainly a time when it was getting more graphic, and for the UK showings, they were starting to censor them. Yeah, I mean, by then they were doing things like a guy that was feeding on cancer. There's an episode called Leonard Betts, where he's another mutant and he needs cancer cells to survive. There's a fat-sucking vampire episode, which was ahead of its time because it was about lonely hearts on internet forums, overweight ladies that this guy was literally preying on by sucking the fat out of their bodies, which
Oh yeah,
really
vaguely
gross.
remember that one. Yeah.
So it was genuinely horrific. It wasn't afraid to go to the places you wouldn't expect to go. Um, all balanced with this massive, which I thought was fantastic at the time, and I still kind of do, this massive conspiracy story, which again in the 90s I think was kind of ahead of its time about mistrusting the government and all the stuff that they're hiding. It's I think the show maybe survives as well because that stuff is maybe more relevant than ever. Plus, it had cool aliens.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the fact that because I didn't watch it quite as regularly, I never really got the long running stories, and I did get very lost with them. So definitely more of like the kind of standout horror-y type episodes now. But
Yeah.
where did it actually go in the end with the smoking man and the whole thing with Mulder and Scully? Did they have a baby or something?
Yeah, in the end, they have a baby, which is a miracle because she was abducted and experimented on by the government, which were masquerading as part of an alien
As
conspiracy.
aliens.
She was told that she couldn't have a child, but then this child potentially was superhuman, so some aliens were after it, but then it turned out to not be, and the child was given up for adoption, and there was massive. It went on and on.
Yeah, and who is the smoking man?
The smoking man is ultimately, in a kind of Sophie's Choice kind of twist, is Mulder's dad.
Ah.
So that was teased for a long time. It was almost one of those things where it was being teased, or people were suspecting that was the case for so long that you thought they went, "Oh fuck it, yeah, he's his dad." There was that sense. I don't know if that's the case or if they really had it planned all along, but yeah, he was his real dad. Smoky Man survived a lot. I mean, he survived being pushed
Yeah.
down a staircase. He survived being blown up by a rocket and came back hilariously. I think it was in the most recent seasons. Basically, the show ended in 2002 and came back in 2018. No, 2016. Sorry, for 2 more seasons. But hilariously, the Smoky Man, who'd been blown up on a mountain by this massive rocket launcher or something, came back with a Phantom of the Opera style mask to cover his minor disfigurement. So, well, I'm all right, but I look a bit like Michael Crawford in a Webber musical. But I mean, yeah, they clearly had to kind of stretch things out a bit with the bigger story arc, and in the end, that kind of became the kind of grown part of the show at times. But the standalones were really good. I mean, when David Duchovny sort of left at the end of season 7, but popped up occasionally, Robert Patrick made a really good replacement because he was quite a different character, a very different actor. And I think they did a lot of horror episodes in his run that were really strong. And the conspiracy was sort of subdued and gradually got revived when Duchovny came back. And they became a double act for the most recent seasons 10 and 11, which came out a few years ago. Still was kind of contradicting itself and had painted itself into a massive corner, but I kind of was so glad that it was back. I didn't mind too much. And they did some great episodes. I don't know if you've seen it already, but there's a really part of their comedy episodes. There was a really fun one in 10 or 11. I think it was season 10, called Mulder and Scully Meet the Weir Monster with Rhys Darby, which is a really clever werewolf.
Yes, I do. I remember that one. Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, I do. I love Reese.
Hilarious, brilliant. Yeah, they've done some really cool stuff. There was some terrible episodes, but not that many.
No.
For such a long-running show.
And do you have a favourite season and a favourite character, Stephen?
Favorite character? Well, I have to say I was that person that had posters of Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny on my wall.
Yeah.
And bless him, my dad never mentioned the things. Oh, you love the X-Files, don't you, Stephen? Yes.
It's
End
a
of
great
conversation.
show.
But yeah, so it takes a lot of boxes. Favorite characters? Yeah, I mean, I suppose there were some great villains over time. I always rather liked Mitch Pileggi as Director Skinner, or I think he
Ah, yeah.
started out as a director Skinner. He
Hmm.
got promoted because he was the boss. He was kind of the characteristic, slightly angry boss, and you never quite knew which side he was on. But he was a consistently good character. Maybe he was one of my favourites of the non-Mulder and Scully characters.
Hmm.
Krycek was a really good bad guy for a couple of seasons. This kind of double-crossing FBI agent who was temporarily Mulder's new partner. Favorite seasons, I would have to go for the early days. I do think the show was still really good later on, but it went through some bumps, and probably for nostalgia, but also just because of the consistency, probably season three, um, which has Clyde Bruckman, it has the cockroaches, it has the best, I think, of the kind of mythology alien conspiracy episodes in that season. And it has my best ever episode, which is Jose Chung's From Outer Space, which is a really funny and clever, again, sort of parody, but when it gets serious, it actually means it as well. And it's got Scully's dog called Queequeg.
Queequeg.
Yeah, Queequeg, the cute little dog.
Oh.
What is it called? Is it a Pomeranian? I might have got the breed wrong, but
Oh, I
it's
love
one of those little
Pomeranians.
ones. And and Queequeg figures in a really fun episode where they're stuck on a rock on a lake with a monster in it. It's kind of a Loch Ness monster style episode, which is really lovely because they took time out where it's not a lot happens, but there's a monster in the lake. That's all you need to know, and they're stuck on a rock, so they get to talk to each other for an hour. Which is one of those great character episodes.
And there's a cute little dog.
Beck, yeah. Who she gets from Clive Bruckman. That's Clive Bruckman's dog at
Oh,
the end of
the
that
one that
episode.
the one that eats the old woman.
Is that a Pomeranian? Have I got the wrong
Yeah,
breed?
he's a No, you're right.
Yes.
Correct. Pomeranian.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, so the dog's in it for a while, and I think the dog's in a couple of the other episodes along the way, and yeah, it doesn't end well for the dog, I don't think, but for a while it's up there with the best one. Yeah, so it's always been a favorite. I do like visiting the old episodes, and probably will have a total rewatch at one point. Should also
That would
mention
be
there were two
cool.
films as well, two
Yep.
bona fide cinema movies. One of which was a really bold attempt to kind of tidy up the conspiracy plot and make it accessible for people that had never watched the show, which sort of worked and was quite spectacular. And I was ridiculously excited in the cinema. And the other was a standalone kind of creepy feature length film about an individual plot with Billy Connolly as a creepy pedo priest.
Mm.
But yeah, X Files, fantastic. If you haven't watched it, you must watch all of the episodes immediately.
Yeah.
So that
And if you only ever watch one episode, watch the one with Bruce Campbell in it.
So is that Terms of Endearment? Is that the episode?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a good example of late period X Files being good. Yeah, and there's quite a few late ones that are super good. Yeah, it's my X Files memories.
Oh, it's great, isn't it? That was a great show.
Fantastic show. Yeah, and I'll always have much affection for it. So Sarah,
Mm.
as we near the end of the line for this episode, I'm going to just, I think, talk about a few shows over the years that we also liked, perhaps not as much as The Walking Dead or X-Files, because that thing doesn't exist, but which deserve a mention. So what would you say are standout horror-ish shows for you from decades of television?
Oh, yeah. Well, one that I remember very fondly from very late 90s, early 2000s, British comedy horror type show called The League of Gentlemen. I'm sure you remember that.
Love The League of Gentlemen.
It was so great. It was probably like the first kind of dark black comedy type thing that I actually like properly got into. And it was another thing kind of like the X-Files that it creeped me out something chronic, the thought they put into the characters and the visuals of their characters and stuff are just fantastic. For those of you that have never watched it before, it's kind of a dark, surreal comedy type thing following the lives of the inhabitants of a fictional village called Royston Vasey. And it has like just so many funny characters, and you just follow them as they go about their daily business, but they quite often happen to be psychopaths, serial killers, mental patients, People that probably shouldn't be out in society.
Yes, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's really good. It is like an exaggerated, for comic effect, version of rural England.
Yeah,
Really,
Norfolk, where we're from.
yeah, you do watch it and recognize it. I mean, the one it's in that period where I think a lot of British comedy shows like The Fast Show, and I guess later Little Britain, which I think Little Britain owes quite a lot to League of Gentlemen, although it's not as horror orientated. But they all had catchphrases, and this one, which feels very much like living around here, the thing I always remember is, this is a local shop for local people, which is pretty much what you get when you walk into a shop around here, of a certain nature. Yeah, it's great. It's got some fantastic. It's such a great balance, I think, of kind of crude humor and of surrealism, but also parts of it are actually really horrific. There's a butcher in it, isn't there, called Hilary
Yep.
Briss,
Yeah.
and people are having nosebleeds, which seems to be linked to him. And there's a memorably horrific guy called Papa Lazarou who steals women, who ridiculously made the show controversial recently because he was singled out as an example of offensive blackface, even though if you've watched the show you realize that's not the point at all.
Not at all.
So that was absurd, as is quite a lot of this shite.
It's just, he's just creepy. I mean, he doesn't have an awful lot of dialogue, does he? He just has this one line.
You're my wife now.
You're my wife now. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Dave. Yes. It's fantastic. It got really disturbing. I mean, the characters at the local shop, Tubbs and Edward, who are they brother and sister ultimately? Is
brother
that
and sister and husband and wife?
There's a great moment. I think it's Tubbs. Tubbs is the lady. I think it's a moment where she's being interrogated by police about a missing person, of which there are many. And the first thing that she says, because she's trying to prove she's innocent, we didn't burn him. Yeah, it's fantastic. Do you know what I thought was really, really good is that I think there were 3 seasons, a Christmas special, then they came back, didn't they, for a more recent season as well. But I
just did 3 episodes.
That's right. It was a short
anniversary special over Christmas in 2017. Yeah,
which is really good as well from memory. I'd like to rewatch all of them, but I quite like that in the first 2 seasons, it was a bit more like a sketch show because you go between the different characters, and it had a laugh track as well, like canned laughter. But in the 3rd season, they tended to have episodes just focused on a single character, like Jeff, who was one of the characters, and Pauline, I think, had her own episode.
Yeah.
And they cut the laugh track. So, and that was always quite weird because I remember watching it and thinking, without the canned laughter, this has now got more disturbing.
Quite creepy, yeah.
Because at least then, although it was funny anyway, at least then you kind of realised you should be laughing. But now, and the episodes maybe got slightly more sinister as well. Now I'm actually quite frightened by this because it's going, which I thought was always a genius. There was always a sense that it could become very disturbing at any point, but it would always be funny. And that's such a hard balance. Yeah, it's genius. Great pick.
Yeah, sure is. And they've gone on to do great things since then as well, haven't they? They did Psychoville,
which was fantastic. Yeah, really disturbing and funny as well, with the serial killer and his dear old mum, and Dawn French with that baby thing. Yeah, Psychoville was great. And now Inside Number 9 is 2 of the league. It's Reece Shearsmith and
Steve Pemberton.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah,
mostly.
Yeah, I think Mark Gatiss is. They're great, aren't they? Inside Number 9 is awesome. I mean, it's possibly not travelled, but it is an anthology show, and it can go from episodes that are pretty much pure horror to farcical ones with lots of slapstick to actually I've watched a couple that are just really quite tragic and sad.
Yeah, they did the one. I mean, they have like guest stars and stuff. They managed to like rope David Morrissey into doing a couple of them. And one of the ones when he's the football coach.
Yes, that's right.
It's really quite awkward.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's that social kind of thing, anxiety. Yeah, it really, really tense. It's brilliant because it's not one thing nor another. But then all of their stuff, I think, has touched on horror. They're big horror fans. I've seen them at Fright Fest, where they're massively affectionate about 70s horror, especially, and that shows in the work. But also, obviously, they're comedy geniuses. So that's such a rare balance of those things. But yeah, they're great. League of Gentlemen. Yes. Not to be confused with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was that
not at all
dog shite film based on the fantastic comic book by Alan Moore, with the shitty Jekyll and Hyde CGI stuff.
Oh,
Okay.
bad. How
Great
about you?
choice.
Have you got one?
Yeah, my next, always probably after X-Files, would either be Twin Peaks, which I think does qualify as horror because
Yeah,
it's damn disturbing,
yeah.
and Buffy, which I was a massive fan of, watched from the start, a bit like X-Files. And Buffy's the only show where I actually went to several events. I never
Okay.
managed to go. Annoyingly, I never managed to go. I think I was just too young to go alone and all that stuff for X-Files, for the conventions. But for Buffy, I was old enough because it came out in the late 90s. And I went to a few events, so I was that proper card carrying, convention attending Buffy fan. But yeah, Buffy was great. I mean, Buffy ran for 7 years and was possibly underrated at times. It was, it was a teen show that happened to be really very well written and very grown up. And especially as the characters got older, the show got much darker. And certainly by seasons 5 and 6, it was dealing with some heady stuff, drug addiction. And it did a very clever thing where they killed off Buffy at the end of season 5, which they do in a lot of shows. Of course, they
Hmm.
kill off a main character, like, yeah, right, this is not true, is it? And they bring her back, which you kind of expect and you kind of groan, but you realize she's been brought back against her will and wishes she was dead for the whole
Mm.
season because it's been such a miserable life. So I thought that was a streak of genius. Um, but Buffy wasn't afraid, even though, especially in the first season, maybe it seemed to be this quite average supernatural teen show. It wasn't afraid to get really dark. There's some really sinister stuff in Buffy, and there's probably most famously an episode called Hush, where characters called the Gentleman, who looked like something out of kind of a Tim Burtonish, nightmarish thing
Mm.
from childhood, invade the town and steal everybody's voices. So it's a silent episode, but with this kind of German expressionist look and these very, very disturbing, grinning bad guys. So yeah, Buffy was fantastic. Tailed off a bit at the very end, I think, but it kind of rallied around for a good finish and spawned a spin-off of Angel, which
Yeah.
itself was actually excellent. I mean, that was a bit more, certainly from the start, it was billed as a more adult show, and it again was quite strong and horrific at times, but became, once it, I think, especially once it shedded the ties to Buffy, became its own thing really well.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Uh,
did. I always thought Buffy had like great. They were good vampires.
Very
You know,
vampire,
they
yeah.
were proper vampires as well. You know, none of this twinkly shit.
They were
And,
gross
you
and
know,
nasty, yeah.
yeah,
And
true.
Spike was a great character,
You go through so
fantastic.
many. I mean, it just had so many great characters in it and stuff. Good actors for the time, and just lots of very attractive people. You know, like sometimes I love Spike, sometimes I love Angel, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, you know what? Oz is really cute, and Xander's
Yeah,
really cute,
it was a great bunch, wasn't it? Yeah.
and then you got Anthony Head as Giles.
He's wonderful. Yeah, he's great as Giles. It was a tremendous show. And it's been very influential. I mean, very much. Twilight is very much influenced by the Buffy Angel relationship.
Yeah.
Um, but it set a trend, and I think it's from Buffy that you got a huge amount of supernaturally themed teen shows, which kind of
Mhm.
continue to this day with stuff like Teen Wolf, and I guess Supernatural was probably
Mhm.
a big part of that wave of stuff that came after Buffy. So yeah, that's next on the list. What will be next on yours?
Next on my list, is Ash versus Evil Dead. The 3 seasons that ran from 2015 to 2018, all about the lovely Ash Williams and his adventures carrying on with the Necronomicon with his lovely band of friends, Pablo and Kelly. It was a great show. We've mentioned Ash vs Evil Dead many a time, but I
Yeah,
just urge everyone to watch it because it's just so awesome. Great stuff. So good to see Bruce Campbell back and Sam Raimi doing stuff and Ted Raimi appearing in various episodes, Lucy Lawless. It's just great. Brings back some great memories and it's a great little love letter to the movies.
it was, wasn't it? Yeah, and perfect format. I think half an hour episodes, so it never overstretched itself. Nice callbacks to the old movies.
Yeah.
Couple of moments that were genuinely quite for a light-hearted show. I thought, a couple of quite sinister moments
Yeah,
which took me
sure.
by surprise, and deaths or gore, you know,
Yeah, so much gore, but a lot of slapstick and stuff as well.
massively
But
so.
yeah, they did kind of introduce some like scary characters. The weird demon they summon in the bookshop, pretty freaky with no eyes and just a massive mouth, and then Baal and creating him, and the babies and demons, and yeah.
It's almost another of those things, isn't it, where you thought, wow, this is almost a dream that this is a TV show now.
It
You know,
is, yeah.
it's
You'd wish it
almost,
would never end.
yeah. It's a perfect 3 seasons, but you could easily watch more. It's one of those perfect storms. I think that show, it was done with such affection as well. So that's a great choice. I've picked a couple that will, I think, eventually will have an episode for them because they kind of warrant it. So I couldn't have a list like this without Hannibal, which I think is actually, I know, is the best horror show of the last, I don't know, 10 years or so at least.
Oh,
There's no peer
yeah.
to it.
I
Three
can't
seasons
believe
of
I
Hannibal.
forgot about it.
Yeah, well, I think we have talked about having an episode just about
Yeah.
Hannibal, which I feel we have to do because there's nothing as good as Hannibal that's come out,
Oh, it was
um,
amazing.
from start to finish. Beautiful, this beautiful looking show. The fact that they had like, I forgot what her title is, but they had like a food arranger that made Hannibal's meals look incredible, even though you knew it was Jeff from down the road or something on
Yeah,
the
I
plate.
wouldn't care. I'd have totally eaten that,
It was just
whether I knew it or not.
lovingly prepared. And this may be heresy, but clearly the best Hannibal Lecter on screen is Mads Mikkelsen in the show.
Absolutely.
Um,
Totally agree with you.
there's been others, obviously. Brian Cox in Manhunter, Anthony Hopkins is a lot of fun in those films,
Hmm.
but yeah,
No
there's
one
a total
pulls off the
difference.
the charisma and just smoking hotness of Mads Mikkelsen.
Mads is fantastic in everything, but yeah, totally, he's great. I mean, the show is genuinely horrific, but beautiful and very funny. Like you said, he gets the humor and the wit of this character. Different to Anthony Hopkins, I think, is you can totally understand why people would be seduced
Yeah,
into going along with it. Obviously, Hopkins is a rather different figure and very good in those films, but this is something else. I also think it did something really cool and bold with the relationship with Will Graham, which goes to extraordinary places.
yeah.
Um, Amazing cast like Lawrence Fishburne, Gillian Anderson, Eddie Izzard. I've forgotten the actress's name that plays. Who plays Mason Verger in?
Oh God, hang on,
That's
let
a
me look it
great
up.
performance as well by
And the
someone very good.
and the guy that plays Will as well.
That's James. Is it James Darcy that plays Will? Is that his name?
Sorry, hang on.
Checking something on the internet. If this was 1986,
Oh,
we'd be going to the
it's
library.
yeah.
It's going to bug me slightly, so I need to know.
Sorry,
But
I'm
it was
trying to go as fast as. Oh, I might have
just an
skipped past it.
amazing. And
Hugh Dancy was Will. Yeah.
Hugh Dancy. James Darcy's obviously someone else,
That's from Pride and Prejudice or
lesser
something,
known
isn't it?
cousin. Yeah, yeah. Lawrence Fishburne,
Oh,
Gillian
Joe
Anderson.
Anderson. Joe Anderson was Mason Berger.
Oh wow, I never would have thought of that. He
Oh,
was great.
he was
Disturbing.
creepy. Yeah.
Because again, I think they nailed it. Because in the movie of Hannibal, it's Gary Oldman playing Mason Verger, and it's a
Yeah.
bit panto. It's loads of fun, but it's a bit panto. But in this, they got the balance right. Because the show was very elegant and it was very gruesome, um, and it had that massive amount of black humor. But man, the finale of season 2, especially, was so brutal. It
Mm.
was astonishing, and the very last episode had an amazing ending. I thought, wow, I don't think I want this show to come back because it's the perfect ending.
Yeah. Yeah. I adored season 1 and 2. I think 3 went a little bit pretentious at times.
Yeah, bro, yeah, I get it. It is that kind of technique. Brian Fuller's stuff is a bit like that. I think American Gods at times. I know
Yeah.
he left. I think he left after season 1, but some
One.
of
Yeah.
that is of a similar ilk. But yeah, they're
But
great.
yeah. Brilliant choice. That's such a good season.
Wonderbar. Who's
Yes.
next, Sarah?
Next for me, I'll just leave this one here because it's not everyone's cup of tea. But American Horror Story is something that I followed ever since it started in 2011. But it just kind of has a season for everyone, doesn't it?
Yes.
You either love them or you hate them. But I have to admit, the first 2 seasons for me were very strong.
Seasons 1 and 2, are they your favourites?
No, my very, very favourite is season 4, Freak Show.
Freak Show. Okay, yes, I like Freak Show. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one that totally got me into it. I think season 1 and season 2 were cool. They were scary. They had like creepy gimp monsters and stuff creeping around the place. Season 3 I wasn't very keen on.
Oh, that was
Coven.
terrible. Yeah, I gave up on that one. That was in. Yeah.
And then yeah, it's kind of been hit and miss since then. Like season 4 I was just like adored Freak Show. It was brilliant. John Carroll Lynch is like one of my favourite people ever as Twisty the Clown.
He's a great actor. Yeah.
Oh, he's so brilliant. And Finn Wittrock, I love him. Evan Peters, I love him. Kathy Bates in Freak Show is just brilliant. Jessica Lange?
Oh, she's great in everything. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
she's the star of that show, isn't she? She's fantastic.
Yeah, and then it kind of went a little bit hit and miss after that. You had Hotel with Lady Gaga, although I thought Lady Gaga was really good.
She is a good actor. Yeah.
Yeah. It just didn't quite really do a lot. It was kind of a vampire-y thing, but not. But then it had a really good part for Dennis O'Hare as Liz.
Mm.
That was great. Roanoke was brilliant.
Oh yes, I like
remember
that
that
one.
one?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
back on board with that one. Yeah, and it had a great role
Paranormal.
for Kathy Bates. Yeah.
Kind of found footage paranormal thing. Then it kind of went downhill. You had Cult, which
Oh,
kind of bummed quite badly. They bigged it up so much about it being like, I thought it was going to be completely different because it was all around the whole kind of like Trump getting elected and stuff. I thought it was going to be worse than it was, but yeah, as in, more hard hitting than it was because it didn't really amount to much.
no.
Although Evan Peters tried his best, bless him. Apocalypse, I quite liked. The random kind of crossover between Coven and Murder House kind of worked quite well. And the last season that was just on 1984 was just insane. Like every 80s slasher thing you can ever think of happens in 1984. It,
I want to see that one. That one might
yeah.
get my interest back. I was interested in it, 84.
I don't know. I think you will like many elements about it, but as usual, they do the annoying thing of taking it a little bit too far.
It does fall apart, doesn't it? Do they plan these things? I never quite
I don't know.
understood.
I think Freak Show was the only season for me that held it together all the way through completely. I think I actually cried at the last episode of Freak Show. It was quite emotional.
Yeah, I remember liking Freak Show a lot. I remember Asylum feels like they literally went, oh, fuck this, I'm going to throw everything in.
Yeah.
Although not necessarily in a bad way. I thought that one was quite fun, at least. Yeah, I thought Cult was terrible. I haven't watched Apocalypse, but I'm interested in watching both that and 1984. Coven was poor, but the other ones, yeah. I liked Roanoke. The hit rate is probably about average for a show that's a different setup each season. Yeah. He's a very busy man, Ryan Murphy. I still liked Feud, which was his story of Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. I thought that was fantastic.
Oh, had something to do with Ratchet as well, didn't he? Which I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, I haven't watched Ratchet. Yeah, he's making so much stuff. I think he's he's a busy man. He did a almost strangely funny drama about the O.J. Simpson thing with I think it was partly meant to be funny, but it had John Travolta and Cuba Gooding as O.J. Simpson, and it was a strange watch, but it was kind of it was like, I can't stop watching this. I'm going to have to carry on. So he's got some mad talent in there somewhere.
He's very good at doing stuff like that.
But I think there's something, even the worst of it, even Coven, which I admittedly didn't watch all of it, but I quite like the sort of campiness of some of it. So I think, I think I'm kind of on board with that choice, actually. Yeah, cool. I think I've got a couple more. A quick shout out, actually, for Millennium, which was a 3-season show with the great Lance Henriksen. This I always thought was really underrated. Chris Carter created it kind of halfway through the run of the X-Files, so he was running 2 shows, as these people are prone to do. Millennium, I thought, had such a great second season. that it probably counts on my list just for the second season. I mean, the others are okay. It started out as being a show that was a bit like watching Seven every week, because it was like, it was set in Seattle, so it's raining all the time. No one puts the lights on. And Lance Henriksen with a grim face is going around investigating serial killers, and it's pretty sinister stuff. Serial killers were big at the time, but the second season goes a bit madder, and it goes into much more detail about a thing called the Millennium Group and their predictions for what was then the upcoming millennium. Of course, now is just a distant memory. And Terry O'Quinn's very good in it, as he is in everything. And ultimately, the second season does something kind of extraordinary, and it pretty much wipes out the world in a big plague, including the leading lady, which is Lance Henriksen's wife. And it's like, oh, balls to it, it's all over. And then they bring it back for a third season. They basically have to do a big backtrack saying, well, the plague was contained. Wifey's still dead, but now we're going to restart the show as another kind of Seven every week, serial killer of the week affair. But I was totally on board with the second season, which is basically where Chris Carter was too busy to run it, so they gave it to the two guys that had worked on the X-Files doing a lot of the horror episodes. They'd gone batshit mad with it and thrown everything at it and assumed they weren't coming back for another season, so pretty much ended the world at the end. And that is one of my favorite seasons of TV ever. So for that reason, Millennium, which is totally bonkers in the second series, gets my vote. And Lance Henriksen's great. Yeah, he's fantastic. Yeah. What's your next one, Sarah?
That's kind of like it for the most of the ones that I really loved. I mean, I went through a little bit of an obsession of True Blood.
Oh, I saw some of True Blood, yeah.
Yeah, more like a more grown up version of Buffy with loads of sex in it.
Sure.
And Alexander Skarsgård.
Ryan Quanten as well, right?
Yep. Ryan Quanten and Anna Paquin.
She was very good in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I did used to get very annoyed with her accent. And then you had Stephen Moyer as well. So it was another Buffy type thing where you're like, oh, I love Bill, and then I love Eric, and then I love Sam, and then Jason, who was Ryan Quanten, was just crazy and thick but beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the first three seasons were definitely very strong for me.
I think I didn't get as far as 5. I think maybe I saw the first 4, possibly. Yeah.
It was another one of those shows that kind of had a bit of a disappointing ending. You sit and watch all those seasons, and it ends not how you would foresee it and how you wanted it to. So I was kind of left with bad taste in my mouth by the end of it, but I did enjoy at least up to 4 or 5, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
How about you? What's your next one?
Oh, really, just a couple more, I think. I mean, there's things like The Twilight Zone, which I love, which had a couple of fantastic creepier episodes. Not necessarily a horror show, though. One that I think we will probably discuss in more detail, because they are kind of like mini films, is Masters of Horror, which lasted 2 seasons, made for Showtime, and got a lot of big names like John Carpenter and Dario Argento. And although it's an anthology show, so there was some hits and misses, a lot of them were really, really good. And there's a Carpenter episode that's really strong. There's a couple of others that were brilliant. So Masters of Horror was quite a standout for me, and was also a bit more free to do whatever it liked, because it was made for cable, so you had some fairly extreme stuff in there. And the last one I could think of was an ITV show called Beasts from the 1970s, which has one of the scariest things I ever saw on TV, which is an episode called During Barty's Party is the name of the episode, which sounds terrible, but it's where this awfully English middle-class couple are stuck at home and listening to the radio, and there appears to be an invasion of giant rats happening in, I don't know, somewhere in Surrey or something. And you never see the giant rats, but you gradually get the sense that they're invading the house by the sound effects. And they're listening to the radio, and the radio is reporting all this chaos going on in England because of this bunch of oversized creatures. And it's really scary. It's a bit like the short story that inspired The Birds, which is all set in a farmhouse and is really scary because you're trapped in there with the characters. But During Barty's Party, yes, that is the name, is is such a great hour of television. And Beasts generally, which had a kind of natural threat theme, sort of, was a great 6 episode anthology show from the 70s that, again, if you watched this in the 80s, along with a few other things, it would give you nightmares. Along with a show called The Mad Death, which was about rabies. I was terrified of rabies for years because of The Mad Death, which was also really disturbing. It had scenes of dogs being shot. It was pretty strong stuff for
Mm,
BBC in the
mm.
80s, but rabies was a kind of big thing at the time, and they were drumming in the paranoia that, yeah, that nice looking thing down the road could be rabid. So yeah, that's pretty much it, really, I think.
Oh, there's been a lot of good series over the years.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
sure has.
you gotta love the odd movie here and there, but there's nothing better than getting stuck into a good series, is there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the ones we've pointed out tonight, especially the kind of main ones, are, yeah, total obsessions at some point or another, and probably still are, actually.
Yeah.
I'd rewatch them at any point. I think we will have a Hannibal episode though.
Yeah, sure. I'm up for that. I've got all 3 seasons,
Nice.
so it'll be good to rewatch them all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. That was just tremendous. That was something else. I think that's it. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground, many years of television, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, that really is it for this evening. I think we should just say that the next episode of the Horror Screams podcast, episode 20, yeah, getting old, will be something special indeed. So it's 40 years. That's right, 40 years since 3 truly great werewolf films came out, all in the same year, which probably explains why we've not had a good werewolf film since. So we had An American Werewolf in London, which is fantastic, The Howling, and Wolfen. 3 very different, actually, very, very different werewolf films. You couldn't get 3 more different things with the same creature. We'll be discussing all 3 as part of our 40th anniversary special next month, which will also include, we promised it last time, this time he will deliver, the return of Matt Blissett, who couldn't make it today because he's having his anus bleached again, but he shall return, freshly bleached and full of whatever he's full of. So yeah, stand by for that, which will go live at the end of June. So we'll return for that. I think that's it, Sarah.
That is, yes. It's been a good one.
It has, yeah. That was pretty groovy, wasn't it? Yeah. We shall see you next time. But thanks for listening. Obviously, stay safe
Yeah.
and all that. And it's good night from me.
And good night from me. Have a good one.
Farewell. Bye.
Bye.